Thanks, Walter. It's so great to be back with you again. I've missed you. We haven't had much interaction in the last couple of months, so it's great to be back with you, and thank you for allowing me to step into your space. So today I am going to be talking about dealing with stress and anxiety in the workplace. Mental health, as you know from our discussions, is very topical at the moment. And especially now that we reach this time of the year, I'm not sure about you, but I'm definitely feeling it, and I'm definitely hearing about it in my networks, where I call it the year-end crunch. People have come to the end of the year, they're tired, they're fatigued, the energy levels are low, but at the same time, there's this push to get to the end of the year and get things finalized and signed off and completed before we can go away on holiday. So that's definitely raising a bit of the anxiety and the stress levels as well. And so I'm going to be touching on a few points and seeing how we can get some tips and tools for everybody to help themselves get through this last stretch of the end of the year. So yeah, welcome to the human capital era. As we've known from the pandemic, the past 18 months, never before have we seen such a focus on the human aspect of work and life, and we've realized the importance of human connection and human relationships, and we've realized how fragile life can be as well as the importance of health and well-being. Our needs have changed, both from an employer perspective and an employee perspective. So from an employee perspective, we're looking for meaning or purpose, we're looking for safety, in other words, stability, and we're looking for a place that feels where we belong, that our voices are heard and our contributions are being acknowledged. And from an employer perspective, and companies are looking for, first of all, stability, especially with the past 18 months and the uncertain landscape. They're trying to find ways to grow and navigate through these uncertain, ongoing changing landscapes, and then also, if they're lucky, how to even make a profit. So our needs have changed, and welcome to what was initially seen as positive psychology. It's now being seen as toxic psychology. So in the beginning, when the pandemic happened, the novelty was great because we got our wish. Our wish was granted that we can go home and we can work from home. And we started things like baking banana bread and recipes and happy hour online and all those kind of things. But as we've gone more and more into lockdown, the novelty has started to wear off. And we've realized that it's impossible to be happy all the time or be on this high all the time. We've started realizing and experiencing not only the realities of COVID, but also digital fatigue and what that's doing to us in terms of being online all the time, and where our work and our personal hours are blurring into one. So what are we really feeling? Because when we are in this positive space all the time, we numb ourselves to what's really going on underneath. We try and motivate ourselves and keep up with, yeah, I'm feeling good and I'm okay. And we use those common things of mad, sad, glad, or I'm fine, I'm stressed, or I'm busy. But when we say those things, I'm fine, what do we really mean by that? And when we say I'm stressed, do we know what the source of our stress is? Do we know what's stressing us out? And when we say I'm busy, what are we really busy with, and how effective and productive are we really being? We don't take time to stop and really reflect on those words. We just throw them around. And it's an answer, and it's an automatic answer. And often we're disconnected from what's really going on inside of us. So how are we really coping? Because we're seeing now with mental health being so topical that there's a spectrum, and we kind of do this dance. Some days we feel good and we feel okay, and other days, and I've experienced it myself, when that alarm clock goes off, I just want to punch it, and I just want to climb back under the covers, and I want to hide away from the rest of the world. I just want to be left alone. And so we're realizing the severity of our energy levels and digital fatigue, and these personal and work hours blurring into one. What we've seen, especially here in my country in South Africa, but I'm also following the global stats, and it's not that different to other countries, mental health and the impact, particularly on a male perspective. So here in South Africa, 1 in 4 men are susceptible to suicide versus women. And that's from a gender stereotyping, gender conditioning perspective, where we see that because men are conditioned not to speak up and speak out about what they're going through on an emotional level, and that they have to man up and toughen up and be the provider and the protector and the breadwinner, that they deal with stress very differently to women. And so when it comes to coping strategies, we find different coping strategies to help us cope with or avoid dealing with things that are going on in our lives. We've obviously seen the impact on COVID and the stats globally, where people have turned to positive and negative coping mechanisms. Some of the negative coping mechanisms is unhealthy snacking. So working from home, it's easy to get up and go to the fridge or the cupboard and snack more than usual. We've turned to alcohol, cigarettes, what is being called alternative medicine or plant-based medicine, so cannabis and mushrooms, antidepressants medication and anti-anxiety medication. And 49% of respondents have said that they would be interested in receiving mental health support. And why I'm sharing these stats and why it's important is because the impact of the short-term versus long-term stress and anxiety. And so short-term stress, yes, there is healthy stress, but it can also become a negative stress if we are not aware of how it is impacting us and what those triggers are, the different types of situations, the different types of environments, and the different sources of our triggers, and where that starts blurring over from a positive stress to a negative stress or anxiety. So, for example, a form of positive anxiety or positive stress, let's say you have a big meeting, a big presentation, an interview. It's normal to feel some level of anxiety and stress. And once you've had that interview or you've done your presentation, your anxiety and stress levels go back to normal, and you operate and function at a normal level of reactivity and responsiveness. Whereas prolonged stress and anxiety, when it starts becoming a negative, is we start being constantly on edge. We start feeling anxious all the time. We can even go in extremes where we can start having panic attacks and anxiety attacks. It starts affecting our moods, it starts affecting our energy levels, and it can affect our personal lives as well as our workplace in terms of being able to focus, being able to be productive, and being able to apply our critical analytical problem-solving skills and our relational skills as well. So we've come to realize that mental health is health. And it's a daily necessity for us to be able to operate effectively and function effectively, both personally and professionally. And a lot of companies, when they talk about mental health right now, saying this respectfully, what they actually mean is self-care routines and digital fatigue. But we need to look at the bigger spectrum of mental health and what that really means when it comes to dealing with anxiety, depression, stress, medication, negative coping mechanisms, suicidal thoughts, and all of those things on the bigger spectrum of mental health. So what are we seeing in terms of the triggers for mental health issues? Long hours without breaks, where we just go from back-to-back meetings. We've just replicated what was happening in the office to now what is happening online. In the office, we could get up and go for, we could have a break by walking from one meeting room to the other, or going past our desks, dropping stuff off at our desks, going past the water cooler or the coffee station, or even going to the bathroom. Whereas working at home, these back-to-back meetings, we don't get to have that gentle reprieve where we step away from our desks. Unrealistic expectations. Just because we're at home, why can't we be online? Why can't we deal with queries or phone calls or WhatsApp messages or whatever platforms that we're operating on? We're at home, right? Where else do we need to be? And not feeling valued and appreciated because we're working in a virtual or online or a remote world. We lose that ability to walk up to a colleague's desk or a direct reports desk and go, hey, job well done, or thank you for what you did, or thank you for helping me here, because it gets lost in the online space. Toxic workplace culture as well, and job insecurity with this ever-changing world that we're living in, and potential job losses, salary cuts, cuts in working hours. And also lone working. So not only those people that live alone and on their own, But those people that are either one-man departments or one-man divisions, where they don't have a team surrounding them, they don't have a support structure surrounding them. And what we've seen in terms of the research when it comes to chronic loneliness and the impact on our immune system is that it is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, making it much more deadlier than obesity. And then lack of support from our managers or our peers because of this online working. And when we were in the office, it was very easy to gather around a meeting table or a boardroom table and brainstorm and throw ideas about and problem solve or have status updates. But it takes much more intentional effort to do it in an online environment. And simple things like having our cameras off, not being able to connect with a person and see a person also contributes to that feeling disconnected and feeling isolated. What we're also seeing is that a lot of people are not speaking up and not speaking out when it comes to their mental health challenges and the problems that they're facing because of that stigma associated with it. But the research is showing us that stigma and removing or reducing stigma is not our priority when it comes to the top behavioral health priorities worldwide. And so to encourage people to speak up and speak out and get the help that they need, we have to make removing the stigma a priority as part of our mental health and wellness strategies. And our new biggest concern, the new biggest pandemic that's being predicted is that of burnout. Because of this uncertainty, because of this constantly moving landscape, because of the way that we're working, the hybrid models, the fear of the pandemic, all of those things, we're being stretched on so many levels. And so burnout is real. And some of the telltale signs of burnout is exhaustion, not only physical exhaustion, but mental and emotional exhaustion as well. So those days when you just feel, you know what, I can't even get out of bed today, or I can't cope, I'm not able to focus, I'm making mistakes, I can't concentrate, I'm irritable, I'm snapping at my partner, I'm snapping at my colleagues. Those are telltale signs that potentially you're reaching that stage of burnout. Illnesses as well, not only physical illnesses, but things like backache, neck pain, jaw pain, burning, itchy eyes, decreased productivity, feeling frustrated and irritated at yourself, but at others as well. A lack of enthusiasm, so losing the joy in those things that used to bring you joy in the past. Whether it was your personal activities and hobbies, or spending time with your family, your children, or doing things in the workplace, tasks that used to energize you. When you start losing enthusiasm and the joy in those things, that's also a telltale sign that potentially you are reaching that burnout stage. And falling behind in work, not being able to cope and keep up with things that you could cope with, and just feeling so overwhelmed. And when we feel overwhelmed, what we can tend to do is procrastinate and or get stuck in that analysis paralysis and perfectionism and wanting to go back and double check and recheck, and then we end up putting ourselves under more pressure because our deadlines now start looming and becoming more and more critical and urgent. What is the impact of burnout? Well, long-term stress and health problems. They say that it can take up to 6 months for someone to come back from a burnout phase or situation. And burnout being having to take time completely away from the workplace, from their role, from their tasks, from their responsibilities, having to reset and recharge themselves mentally, emotionally, and physically as well. So having to take a sabbatical from work. Physical exhaustion, sleep deprivation, sleeping patterns. If you notice that your sleeping patterns are becoming irregular, you're waking up earlier than normal, but you're waking up with an active mind. You've got things going on in your mind. Not being able to switch off and just relax and be calm. Not being able to take time out away from your devices. Losing your sense of self-worth and meaningful achievements. Even You know, when someone says to you, hey, well done, that was a great presentation, that was a great job that you did, and you can't completely dismiss it or downplay it as something that is irrelevant, or something that is not important, or something that is not meaningful to you. Complete burnout, depression and anxiety, and suicidal thoughts, and even suicide itself. So if you are experiencing any of these symptoms, I want to highly encourage you to please reach out and seek help and seek support. Speak to your line manager, speak to your colleagues, speak to a professional in your area, speak to your friends or your family. It doesn't matter who you speak to. The most important thing is that you take action and you get help. We've also realized that some employees are not safe working from home, and that's because of domestic abuse and gender-based violence. And that can also cause stress and anxiety, and it can also cause burnout, because we're trying to put on this brave face, this facade that we're okay, but meanwhile, behind the scenes, we're actually not. And I'm not only talking about physical and sexual abuse, because it's easy to see those signs because there's physical evidence. I'm talking about the other kinds of abuse: mental, verbal, emotional, and financial abuse, because that, together with life's stresses and workplace stresses, can contribute to us experiencing burnout as well, where we just can't cope anymore and we have a complete mental meltdown or emotional breakdown. And then how do we deal with this? Well, we need to take that holistic approach, and it's a three-pronged approach. So I'm going to stop sharing here, because that three-pronged approach is, first of all, self-care. How do I take care of myself in terms of my own personal strategies that I need to put in place for myself to be able to take care of my own mental health and my mental well-being? Because if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else is going to. And this is where accountability and self-responsibility comes into play. Your own mental health and well-being should be first and foremost, because if you are not well, you cannot be well for anybody else, personally and professionally. So from a self point of view. Second of all, from an organization point of view, organizations being able to take employee well-being seriously, being able to implement support structures to cater for employee wellness needs across the spectrum in terms of lifestyle needs. So, for example, parents being able to give them the flexibility and adaptability to take care of their child caring needs, as well as manage workload responsibilities, being able to take care of other well-being or carer duties and responsibilities. So, for example, elderly parents perhaps, or perhaps partner responsibilities and sharing those responsibilities, but also people that live on their own and live alone and that may need additional support structures for themselves as well. And then from a national perspective, so your national healthcare help centers, whatever it might be in your country. So, for example, in our country, we have Lifeline, we have SADAC, which is our South African Depression and Anxiety Groups. So being able to tap into those national support structures that offer things like free counseling, like free support, like free help, like support groups, whether it be online or whether it be in person, depending on what your lockdown restrictions are right now in your country, but that you need to be proactive and take action to take care of yourself, because burnout is real. Burnout has a long-term serious impact, and there is a very real impact of being able to come back from burnout and to be your real self again. There's a long-term impact, not only from an individual point of view, but on your family and your loved ones, as well as on your organization. So I hope that's given you some food for thought and something to think about, and some tips and ideas that you can apply in your personal as well as in your professional world. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions or any other comments.
Hey, Paula, fantastic. I mean, it's a really great overview of the very, very important issue talking about mental wellness. I just want to add to that from a healthcare perspective. The latest news is that over 750,000 healthcare workers in the United States have chosen to leave the profession. So that's another added stress of finding the right people in the right roles when you have openings on your teams. The other thing is that, healthcare workers, we had to come to work. There was no choice. There was no working from home for us. So the stress that we had to work in an environment that not only did we have to be concerned about our own health, but also bringing, COVID home. And over top of that, all of the employees, our team members, our teammates who came to work every day, their stresses that they experienced with having young children at home or even elderly parents at home, all added to this bucket of stress. And those are really three key drivers that we have seen this exodus of people saying, listen, I've had enough. I posted an article, I think last week around that topic, that this is of serious concern, and couple that with all the things you talked about. This is a real, pandemic amongst healthcare providers, and is a real thing. So again, thank you for all the efforts and time that you put into making sure that this message is heard loud and clear worldwide, that we need to make, we need to pay attention to that. Interesting enough, same as we talked about last time, is the workplace violence, which has shifted now to home place violence, and that comes in different forms. Again, as leaders, it is our responsibility to have our eyes wide open and be in tune with our teammates and be cognizant of any sudden changes in behaviors that we should worry about, and then be able to have a conversation with them, offering them, not being judgmental, but offering them services that are available. Or as I call here on Wednesdays, reach out Wednesday. Just reach out to somebody who you think is having a hard time by asking a simple question: how are you doing? So I'm going to take this off the recording, and again, thank you for hosting this call today, Paula, and we'll go to the Q&A as soon as I stop. Yeah.